accountability. What you need is to create a deadline in somebody else's world. So a lot of the time management books will talk about this idea of false deadlines. So it's like if you've got something that needs to be done on a Friday, give yourself a deadline of doing it by close of play Wednesday or early on Thursday morning, and then you have this lovely 1 or 2 day time lag in between where you can just really put the finishing touches to it and everything, but it's basically done. I think this is just a load of nonsense. So I think accountability only comes about if there's a deadline in somebody else's world. This is why when I write books, one of the things I'll do is I'll know my deadline from the publisher, and then I'll work back from there, and the deadline that comes before that for me is focus groups. So I will give a bunch of people well in advance, I'll sign them up and I'll say, on this date you'll be getting the first draft of my book, and then they're going to have a couple of weeks to read it, and then they're going to give me feedback. So basically I have to meet that deadline, and that deadline is ahead of the publisher's deadline. What that means is I'm getting to the publishers something that has already had deadlines in it, in advance, and it means by the time I get it to the publishers, it's in a much better state and lots of other things have happened. So if I didn't have that, I would just know that I can just edge things closer and closer towards the deadline, and it would just mean that I didn't have any accountability. But all these people who've given up their time and volunteered to be in my focus group, I know what a big deal that is, so I just don't want to let them down. Like, I'm really focused on trying to meet that deadline rather than meeting the real deadline. So that creates for me accountability in a different place to the real deadline, which is from the publishers. So in the same way, if you really have an essay that you want to do and you want to make sure that you're not burning the midnight oil and it's due on the Friday morning and you're up Thursday night until 5 a.m. or whatever, the only way of doing that is to create the deadline in somebody else's world. And not just that, but it has to be somebody who you don't want to let down. So if you're happy to just let that go and you're happy to stand there on Thursday and say, I know I said it was going to be done by yesterday, but it's not even done yet. Unless you're, really embarrassed about that kind of situation, it's not even going to work. So I would just say abandon the whole notion of false deadlines. A deadline that's only in your head, it's just not even worth thinking about. It just doesn't work. So create accountability by creating a deadline in someone else's world.